Right now, while most investors are staring at red candles and questioning everything, something is quietly being locked into place that could make the next few weeks the most important period in XRP's entire history. July 4th. That is the date the White House has publicly targeted to pass the Clarity Act into law. Patrick Wyatt, the White House crypto advisor, said it himself. And if you understand what that single piece of legislation actually unlocks for XRP, not in theory, not eventually, but immediately, today's video is going to change how you see this market. Because here is the thing most people are missing right now. Every time XRP has been on the edge of a major move, the SEC lawsuit, the Genius Act, the ETF applications, there was always one more thing standing in the way, one more regulatory hurdle, one more institutional excuse to wait. The Clarity Act is the last one. When it passes, U.S. banks can use XRP for cross-border payments. U.S. institutions can legally deploy capital into XRP at scale. U.S. corporations running Ripple Treasury can move their stablecoin operations fully onto XRP rails. Every institution that has been saying, "We are interested but waiting for legal clarity," gets their green light simultaneously. And that is not a small event. That is every door opening at once. Today, I am going to break down exactly what is happening right now. The Clarity Act timeline, the SpaceX IPO liquidity dynamic, the FOMC this week, and why patient XRP holders who understand what is being built are positioned for something that the short-term price action cannot currently reflect. Welcome to XRP Verified, daily XRP analysis built honestly for the US investor. Subscribe and turn on notifications. Let's get into it. Let me start with the Clarity Act, because everything else in today's video flows from this. White House crypto advisor Patrick Wyatt has publicly confirmed that the administration is targeting July 4th to pass the Clarity Act. Senator Cynthia Lummis confirmed this week that while July 4th remains the goal, the more likely floor vote timeline is after lawmakers return from recess on July 13th, given the remaining items that need to be resolved before the bill comes to a full Senate vote. What are those remaining items? 3 things. First, reconciling the Senate Banking Committee text with the Agricultural Committee text into one unified bill. Both committees marked up versions of the legislation with technical differences that need to be merged. Second, ethics provisions related to crypto holdings by public officials need to be finalized. Third, law enforcement concerns about certain DeFi language need to be addressed. Several Democratic senators have said they will not vote yes until they are satisfied that the current wording does not create loopholes for illicit finance. The White House held meetings with law enforcement officials this week specifically to close this gap. Galaxy Research currently puts the probability of the bill passing before the August recess at approximately 60%. Over 200 organizations, including Ripple, Coinbase, and Binance, just sent a letter directly to Senate leadership demanding the bill be brought to a floor vote immediately. Now here is what Brad Garlinghouse, Ripple's CEO, said about this on Fox News this week that I think every XRP holder needs to understand. He said that most of Ripple's current growth is coming from outside the United States, not because US banks do not want to use XRP, but because without the Clarity Act, CFOs, treasurers, and bank executives are nervous that a future regulator could reverse course and attack the industry again. The Clarity Act removes that fear permanently. It gives every U.S. institution the legal certainty to lean in. When that certainty arrives, Ripple does not just pick up a few new clients. It potentially unlocks the largest untapped financial market in its entire history. And Brad confirmed Ripple is on track for a $1 billion annual revenue run rate by end of 2026, without that US unlock even fully happening yet. Now let me talk about something that is affecting crypto markets this week that most people are not analyzing carefully enough: the SpaceX IPO. SpaceX began trading on the Nasdaq this week. It opened at approximately $150 per share and ran to $170. Giving Elon Musk's company a valuation that makes it one of the largest IPO events in recent history. Now, here's the question every crypto investor needs to be asking. Where did the capital that went into SpaceX come from? The answer: a significant portion came out of risk assets, including crypto. When a massive IPO event happens, Institutional allocators, hedge funds, and retail investors pull capital from existing positions to fund their SpaceX allocation. That is part of why crypto markets have been under pressure this week. Liquidity was being pulled toward a once-in-a-decade IPO event. But here is what historically happens after a major IPO. The initial trading excitement peaks. Pre-IPO investors who were locked in start taking profits. That capital flows back out, and some portion of it historically rotates back into crypto and other risk assets. The window for that rotation is typically 1 to 3 weeks after the IPO date, which puts us in mid to late June, right as the Clarity Act Senate floor vote is approaching, and the Japan FSA XRP ETF decision is in late-stage regulatory review. 3 catalysts potentially converging in the same window. Clarity Act vote. Post-SpaceX liquidity rotation. Japan ETF decision. None of them are guaranteed to hit simultaneously, but the setup is worth understanding. Now let me talk about the FOMC, because this week's Federal Reserve meeting directly impacts crypto market conditions. The Federal Reserve is holding its June FOMC meeting this week. Markets are currently pricing in a very high probability, approaching 70%, that the Fed holds rates steady with no cut at this meeting. That is the baseline expectation. It is largely priced in. What would actually move markets is a surprise. Either a more hawkish tone than expected, which would put additional pressure on risk assets including crypto, or any hint that the Fed is becoming more open to cuts later in 2026, which would be a tailwind. The macro argument for eventual rate cuts, which Jake Claver and other analysts have been making, centers on the Japan carry trade. If Japan raises interest rates significantly while the US holds rates high, the spread narrows, the carry trade becomes less attractive, Japanese institutions start selling US treasuries, and the Fed eventually has to cut to prevent a bond market stress event. That sequence, if it plays out, would likely be one of the most significant macro catalysts for crypto in years. Not because it is good news for the economy, but because falling US rates combined with stablecoin treasury demand and institutional crypto rails being fully operational creates the exact liquidity environment that has preceded every major crypto rally in history. We are not there yet, but the pieces are being put into position. Now let me give you the current technical picture, because you need to know where XRP stands right now and what to watch. XRP is currently trading around $1.13 to $1.15 after bouncing from the $1.08 to $1.10 range that represented the recent low. The $1.05 to $1.08 zone is the critical support floor. Losing that level on a sustained daily close brings the psychological $1 level into play, and that would likely trigger additional panic selling from short-term holders. The RSI is sitting in the high 20s to low 30s, just at the edge of oversold territory. The MACD on the daily chart is showing bears losing momentum. Sellers are getting exhausted. Volume has been picking up alongside the recent bounce in a pattern that technical analysts associate with institutional positioning rather than retail speculation. Key levels to watch. $1.20 is the first meaningful resistance, and the level XRP needs to reclaim with strong volume to signal the worst of the selling pressure is passing. $1.34 is the next recovery target. $1.45 and above is where short-term sentiment flips from bearish to cautiously bullish. Exchange supply of XRP remains near 8-year lows. Long-term holders added to positions during the recent sell-off. XRP ETFs globally hold 1.3 billion XRP and have seen net outflows on only 14 to 15 days out of the last 200 trading sessions. In May, while Bitcoin ETFs bled $2.4 billion, XRP ETFs drew $132 million in net inflows. The on-chain picture does not look like an asset that is dying. It looks like an asset that is being accumulated during a period of maximum retail fear. Now let me give you the honest picture, the full context that makes patient holding make sense without pretending the short-term risks do not exist. June has historically been a weak month for XRP. Further downside is possible. If macro conditions deteriorate, if the FOMC turns more hawkish than expected, If geopolitical tensions escalate, if the SpaceX liquidity rotation takes longer than expected, XRP could test the $1 level before it recovers. But here is the bigger picture that I want you to hold on to through all of that short-term noise. The Clarity Act is weeks away. The Japan FSA XRP ETF is in late-stage review. Ripple is inside the DTCC working group. JP Morgan settled a tokenized treasury transaction on the XRP ledger in under 5 seconds. The US stock market is moving toward real-time tokenized settlement that requires XRP infrastructure. RLUSD is a top 5 stablecoin, growing at 97% in 30 days. The AI agent economy is being built on crypto rails, and Ripple is building the infrastructure for it. Every one of these developments has happened in the last few months. Every one of them was impossible or illegal or blocked just 2 years ago. The people holding through the red candles right now are not holding blind faith. They are holding documented, confirmed, institutionally validated infrastructure that is moving closer to full activation every single week. The price has not caught up to the fundamentals, but in markets, it always does eventually. The only question is whether you are positioned when it happens. Your full summary for today. Clarity Act targeting July 4th. More likely mid-July after lawmakers return from recess. Galaxy puts passage probability at 60% before August. Over 200 organizations, including Ripple, demanding immediate Senate floor vote. Brad Garlinghouse confirmed on Fox News. $1 billion Ripple revenue run rate by end of 2026, most growth currently non-US. Clarity Act is the unlock for the largest untapped financial market in Ripple's history. SpaceX IPO creating short-term liquidity pull from crypto. Post-IPO capital rotation window is mid to late June, converging with Clarity Act timeline and Japan ETF decision. FOMC this week, 70% probability of hold. Watch for tone signals that affect rate cut timeline. XRP technical picture. Current range $1.13 to $1.15. Critical support $1.05 to $1.08. First breakout target, $1.20. Recovery targets, $1.34 and $1.45. RSI approaching oversold. MACD showing seller exhaustion. Exchange supply at 8-year lows. ETF inflows continuing. Patience is not passive right now. It is a strategic position based on the strongest fundamental setup XRP has ever had. Stay informed. Stay patient. Do not let short-term candles make long-term decisions for you. Hit the like button if today's breakdown gave you value. Subscribe and turn on the bell for your daily XRP update. I will see you tomorrow. Stay sharp, stay patient, and as always, stay verified.